just call everybody.
Hello, please come inside. The session will begin immediately. The next part of the session will begin immediately. So please come inside.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. This is the last session, Your Holiness, on the last day of this year, so I think it is very auspicious. We have you with us, and we are really honored. We were going to have two speakers in this session, but unfortunately, one speaker, Geshe Thapke, has been taken ill, so we are left with just one speaker and a general discussion and a kind of a concluding, session with His Holiness. So may I now invite Professor Sion Raman, who is from the University of Washington, Seattle, USA. He is going to make a presentation on the nature of mind from neuroscience and physics perspective. May I request you, sir, to make your presentation?
Thank you.
You have around 20 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I'm very honored to be having an opportunity to present this talk in front of you. And also I would like to thank Professor Gokhale and Professor Nawang Samtenla for giving me an opportunity to come here to present this talk. And today I'm going to talk about the nature of mind from the neuroscience and physics perspective and what we can learn from here. And outline of my talk consists of many topics: gross features of consciousness, mental consciousness, perception of time, and how we can use EEG for research, and also looking into precognition and possible theories. So starting in a very simple way, neuroscience is very good by now that we can tell where different areas of the brain are, which could be sort of suggested that where the reading or speech or smell or hearing is. The picture which is in front of you is showing, from my left side is the front and this way is the back. And so there we can really classify what part of the brain is responsible for these features. Now, so in summary, what we can say is that when it comes to gross features of the brain/mind, that smell, speech, sense of touch, we can define very precisely from the neuroscience point of view. Now, I'm just going to the next summary slide, where, so when it comes to the senses, I would say probably neuroscience and the Buddhist side will agree quite a lot. And many experiments can be performed to map all these gross features of consciousness. And lately, now through more advanced techniques, now we can even study even which part of the brain could show emotions and also color. I'm going to just use it in my hand. So I can very easily tell emotions like love, compassion, and even anger and fear. We can see which part of the brain respond, and these can be done techniques called EEG as well as magnetic resonance imaging. And these are very common now. Within the last 15 years, many advances have been made. Now, so from So coming back to it, now when it comes to going to whether there is something more than these gross features of the consciousness, this is where majority of the neuroscientists will have problem. If we go further out, what we will say is that the consciousness or the one which has a capability of analyzing or thinking of emotions and those things, it emerges from interactive behavior of bunch of neurons in the brain. And beyond that, most of the neuroscientists will not go. However, there are some scientists beginning to say that that may not be a complete picture of the consciousness. There could be something more than that. And from the Buddhist side, we call it mental consciousness. Neuroscientists may not call it mental consciousness, but they might still say there is something more than just the gross features of the consciousness. So this is where majority of the neuroscience research is. However, when it comes to theorizing, in neuroscience research, we are still trying to look for what generally we call it neural correlates of consciousness, which simply means is, can I find the single neuron or just a set of neurons which could be characterized as representing one object? Now, so here in this picture here, you are seeing a scene where there is a dog and a tree and other things, and their neurons are responding. Out of that, can I pick up the sequence of neuron firing and particular neuron which can be related to a dog? A lot of work is going on in these types of research, but still we have no answer. We cannot find a neuron which is related to a dog or a particular neuron related to a human being. And this is where we are stuck at this moment. And I will give you my opinion. I don't think it will work because same neuron does many other things. Just like a screwdriver, you can use it to perform many things. So are the neurons this way. And so where do we go from here? Nowadays, there are some other theories which people talk about that it may be related to information processing. So like when we have a bunch of neurons, they create an information. So maybe information way might be another way to look at that this might be a consciousness. However, that model itself has not produced any good tangible results. So we are sort of stuck here. Even a lot of people have been challenged that like in case you can have many neurons and go and stimulate and see, can you have a consciousness arising out of it? And the answer is we have not been able to do so. So where do we go from here? So from the Buddhist side, we talk about there is a mental consciousness. We also talk about that there is a extremely subtle consciousness which goes from one life to the next. But to a neuroscientist, that will not be acceptable because we really don't know how to deal with it. However, even though we might differ philosophically that whether there is a mental consciousness or an extremely subtle consciousness, but we can still have a dialogue. And dialogue could be based on that what we can learn from each other by designing better and better experiments to map the consciousness. And that's the direction I'm going to take you now and talk about what is feasible, even though we might differ on the philosophy side on many points. So I will take you, first thing is that perception of time. Now, reason I'm going into time is because in Buddhist texts, often we talk about duration of a moment and what a thought, duration of a thought might be. So I might share some results with you, which might give you one way to collaborate. And so here what I'm showing you, a picture of the brain, and in that the middle portion of the brain and the bottom portion, the one in purple color, is really responsible for time. And so like in a normal brain, time we will perceive in a normal way, but suppose brain is slightly injured, or brain is, say you take some drugs or something, perception of time could be very different. So the perception of time often depends some tissues in the brain, how it is reacting to particular chemicals, what is going on. So now I will take you how we can measure time nowadays, which might relate to duration of a moment. So let's assume that you guys are all expert in science and you know how to do EEG research. So here I am showing you a picture of a person who has about 256 electrodes on the head, and we can measure in a good way what the brain is doing. The layout of the electrode is given in the middle here, and the top of the nose will be here. And so after measuring the EEG, we plot the data. And here I'm looking something called phase. So like how the phase of EEG is changing. And we can relate this to different part of the brain from the top looking. So I have just put a small circle or ellipse, which generally will be the area where language's memory is mapped in these pictures. So we collected the data of one person to see how the phase of this person's brain activity is changing. The top portion shows those plots when the person was just sitting normally, not doing anything. The bottom row shows person we asked to do some meditation, very simple type of meditation. And so here in these pictures, the red color means that the brain is very active. Blue color or light blue color means that the brain is less active. And now let me guide you through these pictures. So here you see brain is doing something. Here brain goes into low activity, then it comes back more active, and then it becomes less active. So what it means is, if you go from low activity of the brain, then high activity and then low activity again. So what it means is, in general, the brain is sort of doing its sick, then it flips into a very low energy state. And that is what is known as a transition. Brain goes from one transition state to another and it keeps going it. And this is a very natural process. Now just memorize the number. Here, a normal state, the transition is about 12 milliseconds or 0.012 second. So that number will be important in the next slides. Now look at the bottom row of the pictures, in which you will see the person who's sort of doing meditation here in an active state, and then suddenly person is able to go into very low state of the brain activity and then slowly come back into higher activity. So what it means here is that a person has a capability to keep the brain in a very low, stable state of activity for a longer time. And then state then changes again and again. And so what it implies here is, if a person is doing meditation, they can actually hold their brain at a very stable position for a long time. And in this particular case, the person was, even though were asked just be in meditation, but this area is still active. So it's a definite possibility that language and memory area of that person was really thinking about something. So even though brain activity has gone in a low state, but person is able to hold some memory and it is continuing. Now I will speculate for a moment. It's a possibility person might be visualizing an object and holding on to it while person is still into a stable state. And so what does it all mean? So one thing which means here is that to us scientists, that a person has a capability to control the activity of the brain. And now if you want to bring out some physics into it, now you can say the mind-matter interaction. Even though we may not be, ordinary people might not be able to move an object, but at least we are able to control our brain by thinking about it, by postulating about it. And so this way it is possible that we can even control our breathing, our blood pressure, and those things. So this is one example of mind and matter interaction. Now how does it work? Oh my God. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I may have to talk a little bit faster. It is a possibility that at a quantum mechanical level, we can control the cell functions, which in turn will be able to influence our thoughts and vice versa. So therefore, mind-matter interaction is possible. Now, earlier I said to remember that normal phase transition was about 12 milliseconds, and now I will go to next slide. And here, time in Buddhism, when looking at from the Vasubandhu's text, we often talk about chana in Sanskrit or moment. In English, they often write K-S-A-N-A, but it is chana or a moment. It is said to be about 13 milliseconds or 0.013 second, and which is very equal to what we are seeing in the normal transition of the brain activity. So these numbers seems to be very close by, and similarly we can measure when people snapping a finger snap, and those numbers also match up very well. So now these are some possibilities where more research can be done. Now I will jump into some another thing that from research point of view, we are seeing that before brain does anything, even if it is not planning on doing something, often we see that brain is begin to prepare itself to going to do an action anywhere between 1 to 8 seconds before it does anything. So as an example, let's say I'm sitting here and I'm going to move my hand. I'm not thinking about moving just not doing anything, just sitting there. But brain, on the other hand, between 8 to 1 second, is already planning. It is already cognizing that it's going to do, and then we do it. We decide to do it. So what it implies is that within the brain itself, there is a precognitive processor going on, and brain knows ahead of time that it is going to perform an action. So what does it all mean? Yes, in a way it is possible that brain sees the action before it happens. And so what are the possible explanations? May I have a little longer time?
It's 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. All right, I need to talk faster. Okay, so now I have to jump into physics. In a way, quantum entanglement is one way which we talk about all the time. If the events are entangled, definitely it is a possibility to plan before an event happens. Now, the quantum entanglement also means that we are all connected. And nowadays there are many proofs that quantum entanglement does happen. It's not like it is just something which many physicists could deny, while others might say it could happen. I will give you one example of quantum entanglement, which I mentioned yesterday. The cell phone nowadays, mobile phone, their antenna is actually based on this photon entanglement inside the cell phone versus the signal coming from cell tower. This is how the signal transmission is there. So that's possibility. Now let's jump into complex time. Now I'm going towards if the precognition is possible, what happens? Now precognition, not only in the brain, if you believe Buddha predicted many things which will happen in the future. So if we are looking for what might be the possible explanation, one way to look at it is that time itself is not a real thing, but it could be a complex quantity. So in real quantity, events are well defined, but and that's where the causality comes in. But in imaginary time, we don't have causality. So past, present, future are not defined. So that's the one way to look at the time. Another way to look at time is, now this is a little more controversial, but it doesn't mean that it is wrong. It has been postulated by an Indian physicist, Sudarshan, that faster than light particles are possible. And so actually myself and some of my colleagues, we applied it to physics. If we travel faster than light, then space becomes time and time becomes space. And within that framework, like if two events are separated, but they are connected. So what it simply means is, I will just take an example of a Buddha mind. So that type of a enlightened mind will know information about all the events at any given moment, because the concept of past, present, and future is not there anymore. And so with these things we can see that predictive capability of the mind is there. Now I will make concluding remarks. Let's say, for example, we could collaborate. So scientists and philosophers, we need to learn each other's language. I would say neuroscientist needs to learn Buddhist philosophy, or at least learn a little bit. And the Buddhist philosophers, they need to learn some neuroscience. Then dialogue becomes very important, and it can be done. I will even throw in some experiments. Let's say you are visualizing an object. What portion of the brain you see the object is being visualized? Now go and get your EEG measured and see what EEG is showing. Right away you can prove two things: how good your visualization is and whether it works or not works. And I know in Buddhist circles there is a lot of desire to measure thuktam, or like when a person goes into like towards the end of life doing the final prayers, then there are certain ways when the extremely subtle mind is about to leave the body, how we can measure. EEG may be one way, but there may be a better way. I mean, that mind has many capabilities. It could even make the body heat change. Using digital photography and sophisticated technique, we can even see the blood flow in the body all over through those techniques. If a person is in, say, in Thukdam, or even, say, is doing tumor meditation, there, without touching the body, I can measure these subtle changes, and that may be another way to measure, and that might bring one more way to bring neuroscience and the Buddhist philosopher together, even though we might not agree on many theoretical points, at least for now. And the main reason is, we neuroscientists, we are still very young. I mean, I'm old, but neuroscience is very young. We have long ways to go, and we can learn quite a lot from great Buddhist philosophers. So maybe I should stop here now, otherwise I will talk quite a lot. Thank you, dhanyavad, thucheche.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very stimulating talk. May I now request His Holiness to respond to the paper?
According to my past experience, I remember clearly 1979, my first visit Soviet Union, then still Soviet Union there. I met some scientists. Then I mentioned when I touch sixth mind beside sensorial consciousness, then the scientists immediately reject. That's a religious matter. So then, of course, later, even very recent, meeting some Western psychologist or say a scholar about mind, when they use the word consciousness, only refer sensorial, 5 sensorial level.
Sensory level consciousness.
You see, I think it seems very, very limited knowledge about sixth mind or chit. 다 가서 한다 가서 셔야 돼. 가서 지서면 가서 지서면다. 가다 심리 남시 여치자도 좀 뭐가쟁이야. 가다다 공연 시베 되기 유기 남바 다도 저기 랑러로 되기 시바 남자 남이 다 너도베 연식이 시바 남자 시기요래. 서들이 유기 남바 따도기 다 유기 남바 따서데 배서 공연 시바디 조리기요래. 도 세니 아니 디 장니 다 이루 레대하지. 다 공연 시베 배지 information 돼야지 마도 텔레직 상내도 뜻을 독주도 배지 야마르디 이루가는 조되게 요래. 사실은 인도산에 다 가다 이루직 수도 예바도 사브샤래. 다 공연 이루샤이도산에 아니 미기 셔버로 쏘고 디디 레바도 저여도 돼도 사브샤래. 다 이루디 다 레바 찌도 저를 배지다 셔투명에 맞도 시
So, leaving aside the complex question of whether manas and chit and vijnana are different or whether they are synonymous, we had a lot of discussions yesterday and today as well. Leaving aside that question, but by examining a simple fact of our experience, of a perception of phenomenon in front of us, when we are confronted, when our senses are confronted with an object in front of it, we have a perception of that thing in front of us. That is at the sensory level. But at the sensory level, there is really, what seems to be happening is simply an information is coming in through our senses. But when it comes to differentiation and evaluation and judgment, good or bad, threatening or useful in all of this, then this is where we are beyond the realm of the sensory experiences. We are bringing mental consciousness. We are bringing the mind. So the senses and the sensory experiences, perceptions bring in the information, and the mind's role is to start making interpretations and evaluations. That seems to be a basic understanding. So now it is clear that many of the neuroscientific findings in examining the sensory processes and their specific locations in the brain, that's pretty well mapped out. But when it comes to the mental consciousness, other than accepting the general point that it is somehow has to be related to the brain activity, but His Holiness was saying that he would be, he wouldn't expect one to find a specific location, region in the brain where we can say this is the location of mental consciousness. So it may be more complicated.
One of my friends, a German, I think brain specialist, Wolfsinger. See, he told me, no, not just me, on occasion of a meeting, the whole sort of brain, usually you see work, the interdependent,
in total interdependence, interconnected way.
And he actually mentioned there is no area or central authority which control brain. There's no such thing. So he mentioned Buddhist concept of anatma is more suitable. According to that, atma is something center that's not there. He mentioned, but in any way, there's something different question. So now, as yesterday I mentioned, tudum shunge saji yotagjur.
So yesterday, His Holiness was saying that he talked about the phenomenon of tuktam, the kind of realized masters after death staying in a state of clear light. And also, so that's a phenomenon. And similarly, there are facts of individuals who can recall past experiences of past life, which also is a phenomenon.
One of my friends, now no longer, he also is a genuine practitioner. Now when he, this sort of meditation experience reached deeper, then grosser level of mind become more deeper. Then more subtle mind become more active. So, and when his meditation quite, when a bit successful, then that kind of experience, actually happened. When that happened, the reflection about past life. So there are persons who actually experience like that. So therefore, still we need more further sort of exploration with full collaboration with scientists, brain specialists, like that. Then one, Nizuji got a night that Thomas would take away. And should 2 days as with it. And the New Zealand Kong Napiga New Zealand Sashi Libacadulia, Kong Shan and Yamashichisha, Tudum Shusha. The money in the Mangane, Shasatane, the Pumbupa, Dungudua, and MG, Dagayon, or that they and the server at Dashas, and trans Karjan degrees in Egypt Dongomaris, those are Mangan Shasha. Chani, Dishugo, Harangakeshuni, Nima Shive Gondadi, Korangi, Lawa Yamatigi, Lawa Yebe, Sinzu Dux Juash, Chungsha. Doesn't get to do Koran love either, because today you are Lama Casa. Then Maricasa. Then Jenny, 아까 장소에 빠르게 샤워를 봤어. 아니 라고 예매 구조 접체 라고 예배 신라 신주는 도수 줘야 돼. 빠르게 샤워는 직접 근처 구조 그래서 제거도 와. 지금 통구를 봤어. 그래서 러브주죠. 가다 내디 가서 대 도나야한테 말한서 다 가서 뭐 하다 남주자 룽심기 만져다만 샤베이나 류 구조자의 찹식을 룽고 전에 샤워래. 아니 치워서 뭔도 집에 내걸로 찹식을 룽 가차래. 제가 류 요야게 찹식을 룽 가차래 제가 류 요야지 충분하다. 그래서 따지 가서 리셔시국도 와.
So, with respect to the Tutan phenomenon, there was quite an unusual case a couple of years ago in New Zealand with a monk by the name of Husho Tutan, someone that His Holiness knew. And when His Holiness visited New Zealand, he had died just a few days before. And when he died in the hospital, and the doctors, after a day, told the attendants that although he's dead, but there seems to be something unique going on here, and we will leave it up to you when to take the body away or not. So the hospital authorities were much more understanding, and so the body was kept there for 4 days, and but on the fourth day, according to one of the attendants, one thing they realized is that his left hand had moved and was holding the ring finger of the right hand. Now, this is a very intriguing thing, even from the Buddhist Vajrayana point of view, because according to Vajrayana theory, when death occurs, all the activities of the prana had really come to an cease, and particularly what is known as the all-pervasive wind, which is the wind that is responsible for mobility. So, this poses a problem because, within the Vajrayana physiology and understanding of the relationship between body and mind, one postulates 5 primary pranas and 5 secondary winds. And so one of the 5 secondary winds is called all-pervasive wind that is responsible for the movement of the body. And at the point of death, all of these activities are supposed to have ceased. So which means only the clear light, the luminosity is remaining, but accounting for a physical movement on the basis of luminosity alone is again problematic. So even for the Buddhist, if this phenomenon is real, and if it has really happened, it poses a problem, a question as well.
재상보다 되게 남시 빨네 나 간다 셈을 미게 지 가져오다 다 냠는 간다 롱심지 다 롱심부터 하네 애니 간다 된제 영향지 연구도 왔다 풍부다 남시 바카체네 다 포화사 도 신고로 자 여야 여 타주를 주제.
So there is also another phenomenon known as transference of consciousness, which is in the Tibetan, Indo-Tibetan Vajrayana tradition. And there is a case in the late 50s or early 60s of a meditator, a practitioner, who was, arrested and caught up in these struggle sessions that were quite popular at the time. And he was being led by, People's Liberation Army soldiers to the place where he was going to be, staged for the struggle session. So while they were, taking him, on the way, he asked if he could be given a permission to just sit down quietly and do a little practice. So they gave him the permission. He sat down, and right there, he did the transference of consciousness, and he was gone. So, which suggests that there is, for a yogic, highly advanced yogic, the ability to use the mind-body connection, and through yogic practice is able to make an impact. So these are phenomena that, again, raises questions.
Then I want to share with you. You see, those genuine practitioners, I think many practitioners who spend many years, 20 years, you see, in Chinese Gulag. And one of them, and I met later many of them, told me during their prison life, they found best time for practice. And then one monk who spent 18 years, now some coming. So that he told me during 18 years in Chinese Gulag, he faced few occasions, he faced some danger. And I thought danger on his life. I asked, what kind of danger? His answer is danger losing compassion towards Chinese. They consider, you see, develop anger is very serious sort of danger. So they consider like that. As a result, you see, those people, their mind, physically, of course, due to some sort of hard labor like that, and sometimes physical torture, so some difficulties, but mental level, very peaceful. So through training of mind, and sort of the increase compassion, that immense help to keep peace of mind, and their life remain longevity like that. So these actually I witness. So practice of compassion is really very helpful for our own health. Suppose I think we may call compassion, practice of compassion is a wise way of selfish thinking. So practice compassion. It appears it's a sense of concern of others' well-being. But the result, you get maximum benefit. Thank you.
Can I make a comment? His Holiness, your suggestions and advice is very good, and definitely compassion always need to be developed first. When I was talking about Thuktam and even Tumo, my suggestion is that measuring through EEG, we touch the body, it could be disturbed. But if we do it without touching the body, through And then it may be feasible to measure it and prove it, even though it is a long way to go to do it, but it can be done because there are many new techniques. Yeah.
님은 것도 심히 쉬고다 루스도 쉬우샤스 네 들으면 간다체 아니마 두두한테 지금 옆에 답답으로 지기 어디 로종 대셔지 미주어 대바친 저저스디 리지 디비스니가 반저체체 또 세리 왜 미치기 유관이야 로그디도 마트 신 쉬고 리지게 전에 남주다 가서다 that person 배 용마시부터 직 따로 근데 캔자들 직 용기에서 여기서 또 단지시켜 줘야 말이지. 저 dedication 사와다 리저트에 가서 무튼이 지금 냠십셔야 돼 뺏겨주면 되셔. 천수분님 놀러도스. 줘야 돼 뺏겨주면.
So there was a case of the death of passing of one of the former Gandhentiba, the head of the Gelug tradition, in Drepung in Mungod. And when he was in the Tuktam state on the 4th or 5th day, His Holiness then immediately instructed the Delek Hospital in Dharamsala, which has a portable set of machines that have been left by Richie Davidson's team, to use this on Tuktam project. But it was just a small portable machine. So, and some people have been trained how to use this. So, His Holiness suggested that some people go down. So they went down, and supervised by Richie from a distance. So they put all the electrodes on Rinpoche's head. And Rinpoche was in this state for altogether almost 20 days, 18 or 19 days in this Tuktam state. So quite a number of recordings have been made. So later, His Holiness was saying that he had conversation with Richie Davidson, and Richie shared with His Holiness that looking at the raw data, there seemed to be sort of certain hints of signals, unusual, which at this point is very difficult to interpret or make any sense of, but they are very unusual, something that one wouldn't expect in a dead person's body. So the point is, His Holiness was saying that there are opportunities where neuroscientists and Buddhists can really collaborate so that more kind of informed experiments and studies could be done on these phenomena.
Thank you very much. We'll take up the other questions during the discussion session in the afternoon. Your Holiness, I have been asked to highlight the salient points of the proceedings of the last 2 days. I'll just take a few minutes to go through what I've tried to recapitulate. I would first of all like to congratulate and thank Professor Nabang Samthanla and the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies for organizing this international conference on mind in Indian philosophical schools of thought and modern science. It is indeed a great honor to have amidst us His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is not only our revered teacher, but will undoubtedly go down in history as the twilight or renaissance of morality. In this 21st century of dialogue, as mentioned by His Holiness, it has become imperative to have an interdisciplinary approach and expose the younger generation to compassion, knowledge, and intelligence. The coming together of scientists and philosophers has enriched our understanding of mind, even though the nature and function of mind has emerged as a complex issue in the context of Indian philosophy. In the 9 presentations, attempts were made to analyze the nature of mind, how it performs its emotive, cognitive, and cognitive functions, the mind-body relationship, how the different mental concepts such as Atma, Jiva, Manas, Antakarana, Ahankara, Chitta, etc. are interrelated, and the role played by mind in bondage and liberation, and the various methods available in different schools such as Sankhya Yoga, Jainism, Buddhism, Nyaya Visheshika, Vedanta, phenomenology, psychology, and neuroscience. However, I feel that in the heterodox school of Indian philosophy, the Charvak school was missing. In Buddhism, mind, variously termed as Chitta, Mano, Manas, and Vijnana, is not regarded as a substance, but is supposed to be the ground of consciousness as well as the abode of subconscious operations of mind. The three core features of consciousness are subjectivity, intentionality, and reflexivity. In other words, the other schools of Indian philosophy, generally we find the ground of consciousness is regarded as an independent and known substance, which is called Atma, Jiva or Purusha. The soul substance in some schools such as Vedanta, Jainism and Sankhya is regarded as conscious by its very essence. In Nyaya and Visheshika, consciousness is regarded as the contingent quality of Atma. The soul substance both relates to and liberates from the world through the mind. These schools use many mental concepts systematically which are different from Atma, but are necessary for explaining the so-called bondage and liberation of Atma. These concepts consist of buddhi, cognition, intellect, manas, mind, thought, ahamkara, ego, chitta, mind, antakarna, internal organs, and so on. Although Purusha of Sankhya has been accepted in the form of Sya, Drashta in Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, the text defines the very core concept of yoga as cessation of the modifications of the mind, chitta vritti nirodha. The non-Buddhist schools attach great importance to mind when it deals with the question of bondage and liberation. Yet, from the ontological perspective, they regard mind as insentient. In Nyaya Visheshika, manas is regarded as an independent, insentient substance, which is atomic in size, whereas in Jainism too, manas is regarded as material, Padgalika in nature. In Sankhya and Yoga, the internal organ consisting of manas, buddhi and ahamkara is supposed to be the manifestation of insentient primordial matter called prakriti. In one of the papers, we also saw how Schrödinger denounced a basic illusion in an ordinary and scientific materialistic view of the world by deep assimilation of Indian philosophies that helped him to address the mind-body problem with no concession to either dualism or monistic materialism, and creating a broader view that encompasses science, yet does not reduce to it. Last but not the least, we had a presentation on the nature of mind from neuroscience and physics perspective that was synthesized with the Buddhist philosophy to create an interdisciplinary approach with better tools to probe the nature of mind. Finally, in the discussions, several questions were raised, such as the relationship between consciousness and matter, nirvikalpa, sarvakalpa perception, problems of translation, the learning process and artificial intelligence, mind and body problem, cognition, not to be seen as an act but a product, bridge between the transcendental and the social, and the descent into the ordinary here and now, the role of unfocused consciousness as a witness to allow the flow to happen in one's life, and opting for a life of divinity with the experience of oneness of humanity. However, as a sociologist, I feel that certain questions remain for me, and I would like to, pose those questions. Number one, how do we synchronize individual conduct with collective welfare? As we have the aporetic situation, aporia is a contradiction that cannot be overcome in society. So, is it the fate of modern society? Is there a possibility of a non-ambivalent, non-aporetic ethical code? The second question is, in the context of the information revolution, how do we generate stable human essence, as Heidegger would call it, especially in the age of artificial intelligence and Fukuyama's post-human future? Number three, how does mind emerge from language, social interaction, and relationships? So, for example, we talk in terms of an authoritarian mind, a democratic mind, or a compassionate mind. And the last question, What kind of things can we become aware of, and what remains inaccessible and why, is a general question to all. So, the philosophical and scientific task is not to close the circle, to centralize or totalize knowledge, but to keep open the irreducible plurality in discourse and deal with knowledge that not only informs but also heals and transforms and leads us to overcome suffering and perfect the human condition. Thank you. Your Holiness, may I ask you to give us your concluding remarks?
Nothing. Oh, 2 days as a meeting, I also learned some new things, very useful. So our institution is organized as it is opportunity. So my only hope is, see, this is what's today. Mainly is we are discussing about ancient Indian thought. So comparatively, this country, where the practice of shamatha, practice of vipassana, there are naturally more explanation about mind, about chitta. Although we difficult to identify what's chitta, but still the question of the concentration or analytical meditation. These are not carried by mission, but our internal mission, this brain. So in this country, I think over 3,000 years, this practice already there. Therefore, I think on this planet, I think when you see people are now showing interest about our inner peace and how to tackle our emotion, then ancient Indian sort of knowledge is very, very relevant. So, frankly speaking, modern Indian, I think including you may be exception, but many modern Indian say much neglected about this ancient thought. Modern Indian is too much westernized. So now you should pay more attention about this ancient Indian knowledge. Plus modern education, technology, modern economy, this is very important. But meantime, we already notice now, many parts of the world, in spite of material development, everything there, but too much destructive emotion. That's why 7 billion human beings want peace, happiness, but a lot of problem, our own creation. Why? Nobody wants a problem. But why? You see, lack of knowledge how to deal with emotion, destructive emotion. So therefore, not talking about religion or next life or nirvana, simply, it is our sort of entire humanity's responsibility to create peaceful world, happy world. Everybody wants that. But in spite of that desire, too much emotion. So that when emotion develops, they no longer properly use human intelligence or holistic view. So therefore, you see, now it is very, very important ancient Indian knowledge tackle about our emotion. In order to that, we need the clear picture, whole emotion. Then much easier to deal this emotion. Purely consider as an academic subject. Yesterday I mentioned the hygiene of physical, similarly hygiene of emotion is very important. Now in that respect, the Indian tradition really have great potential. So now modern Indian should not forget the ancient your knowledge. So India is the only nation on this planet who can combine modern facility, modern education, modern technology, science, plus the education about our inner peace or tackle our emotion. India is the only nation who have this sort of experience. So you can combine these two things. So not necessarily entire Indian should be believer. No. Remain some Muslims, some Hindus, some Jains, some Christians, some Buddhists, or non-believer. Okay. But these, everybody have this brain. And this brain, source of emotion. So, I think everybody, I think maybe exception, too young, very early age, maybe this emotion may be less. And gradually we grown up, we consider more smart than much more emotion. So therefore, you see, it is very important, full of knowledge how to deal these destructive emotion. Purely secular way. So that's, I really feel, as a result of, I noticed the whole my life, too many killing, as I mentioned yesterday also, too many killing. One human being killed by elephant or tiger, it become news, we saw. Now, human being killing another human being, thousands, become normal. It's really terrible. Now we must change this kind of sort of thinking. So as I mentioned yesterday, you see, we must think or try to develop demilitarized world. And then eventually, without political boundary, just one human family. Of course, our lifetime will not achieve. But it is worthwhile to think seriously about these things. One time, Kasadi, Governor Brown Saksa, California Governor.
Governor Brown.
One governor. Once he told me, from space, look here, no political boundary, just one human, small blue planet. That's a reality. Now, in ancient time, maybe, you see, reasonable, or my nation, their nation, my religion, their religion, and a little bit fight, killing, including killing. Ancient time, maybe some relevant. Now, today's world, this method is self-destruction. No way to help reduce problem. Use force, more problem happen. That's now today's reality. So, in order to create a peaceful world, firstly, we should create inner peace. With inner peace, the real possibility of world peace. Without inner peace, difficult. Correct, one Swami, I think, correct, I think really, pigeon, more sort of peaceful sort of experience or something. I don't believe that. People usually, you see, or signs of peace, pigeon release. I don't think. Even sort of the billions of pigeon relief will not bring peace. Peace must develop within ourselves. That also, you see, not due to lack of intelligence. You should have full sort of alert our mind, knowing everything, and knowing consequences future, not only our lifetime, but whole this century and next century. Go like that. Our intelligence fully alert, but at the same time, not becoming slave of destructive emotion. That we can do. We can do. Like that. Thank you. So this kind of meeting, eventually, I think should invite more graduate students already from different university. And then also, this morning I mentioned, in this kind of meeting, I think worthwhile take in some of our big monastic institutions in South India. All those ancient Indian knowledge, including non-Buddhist sort of different school of thought. You see, we monk students, these big monastery, at least 20 years, 30 years study. So ancient time, you Indian, our guru, we are Chela. Now modern time, it seems original Chela become guru, teacher. So the tradition of our guru is not yet to learn these things from their Chela. So in any way, our common responsibility to revival of ancient Indian knowledge, firstly, in order to create more sort of fuller knowledge about external matters, internal matters, and mainly peace of mind. And then India, over 1 billion populated nation, a democratic nation. So you can make significant contribution rest of the world, I feel. So thank you, very good.
Thank you very much, Your Holiness.
We are very grateful to you, Your Holiness. For your kind information, we have invited young scholars and students from many universities throughout the country, and also from various monasteries as well. So we are very grateful for being with us during this two-day conference and providing guidance and contributing immensely to this conference. As Your Holiness has been making attempt to bring peace in the world, which actually is unimaginable for a person, and within such a short span of time of 20, 30 years, you have brought such a great, immense change, we can say a kind of revolution in education, in science, and in the way people think about happiness and how happiness can be achieved at a personal level through practice of emotions and mind training. So I think this is one of the greatest contributions that you have made in education and in religious harmony, and to bringing human values and suggesting and giving teachings in bringing human values in education, and which has benefited millions of people throughout the world. So on this occasion, I would like to really immensely grateful, and we all would like to express our gratitude to you. Thank you very much. After this, we would like to felicitate the presenters, the moderators, and the respondents.